electrical work, plumbing, roofing and decks, and landscape grading. If you're thinking about doing a do it yourself project, which is going to include one of those four categories, you might want to think again. Inspectors and appraisers are watching, and they're finding some really big mistakes that could decrease the value of your home. Welcome to Jerome and Real Estate. Listen, today I'm going to be talking to you about 4 do it yourself jobs that sellers should stop doing. All right. This is coming directly from a article out of the National Association of Realtors. They have a realtor magazine. This article was published 27 July of this year, 2022, right? And they are specifically talking about these 4 do-it-yourself jobs that you should probably not try to undertake, okay? What we've seen is a uptick since 2020 up until now, because people had so much free time on their hands, and we all know why we had so much free time on our hands. We really couldn't get outside. So what were we doing? We were sitting around thinking about, okay, how can we fix up this property, right? Or, you know what, I need to sell. I'm not going to waste any money because I don't know what's going to happen in the future, so I'm not going to contract it out. I'm not going to call in a professional. I'm just as good. So there's YouTube videos for everything. I'll just look it up on YouTube. I'll just learn about it, and then I'll just put in some sweat equity in my own home, right? That's what everybody's thinking. That trend is still continuing, but guess what? The inspectors and appraisers that need to help us sell our homes, right, safely, they are now noticing some of these do-it-yourself hacks, right? And they are noticing now that some of the do-it-yourself projects didn't quite turn out so well. So what do you think that's going to do to your selling power, your negotiating power when it comes to putting this property on the market? What do you think that's going to do? Well, let's find out. All right, so 4 do-it-yourself jobs sellers should stop doing. So home inspectors are definitely spotting the work of an amateur versus the work of a pro. All right, and it's happening definitely in these 4 areas. The very first one is obviously electrical work. That's actually one of the things that most people tend to stay away from. They tend to shy away from them. But when it comes to what we think of as, the smaller things, right? Oh, this is just minimal. I'll just put in a dimmer switch, right? Oh, I'll just switch out that electrical socket or whatever. I'll add one, Those things we kind of think of as minor, but they could end up being major, right? Installing a light fixture, ceiling fan, or a dimmer switch are all things that are very common, but the risks include, electrocution and, of course, home electrical fires. So that's something that you're setting yourself up for if you don't know what you're doing. If all you've done is just watch 1 or 2 YouTube videos and then you're like, all right, I got this, I'm going to go do it. No. You may want to take a little bit more time, save up a little bit money if that's the issue, and hire a professional, right? What they're seeing is that even adding a dimmer or a Wi-Fi enabled switch can definitely cause problems because it leads to overloaded circuit boxes, wires that are left exposed, using the wrong wires, right, when you're doing these projects, and improper junction boxes. So these are things that a skilled professional who's licensed and bonded will be able to come in and know right off the bat. You're probably not going to get those tips off of YouTube, right? So definitely just watch yourself. Next thing is plumbing. That's one of those things where I feel like, most people tend to stay away from as well. But you do get those people. Once again, the YouTube videos are out there. We've got all this time on our hands, and we want to change out faucets. We want to add in an extra appliance like the dishwasher or something like that. And if you do it incorrectly, if you don't seal one thing as well as you should, then guess what? It could lead to flooding, which in turn could lead to rot. It could lead to mold. It could lead to serious health issues, right? So you definitely want to bring in a professional and get it done right. The next thing, roofing and decks. So this is definitely something where I could definitely see a lot of people thinking to themselves, all right, you know what, there's just a shingle. Let me get up there. I'll just replace the shingle. This can't be that hard, right? So biggest factors with this is the risk of injury, right? So normally roofers, they know exactly how to get up on the roof without falling, right, and walking around. Your average layman is just not going to be able to do that multiple times and just get away with it. So that's what they've been noticing, is that trend of getting up on there on the roof and people are falling. All right. So there's a huge risk of injury there. The other thing is the deck. So because it's expensive, right? The decks and the roof are usually very expensive to undertake, and decks especially because the materials cost a lot, and then you add on top of that, the labor charge, of course. So a lot of people are saying, okay, you know what? I'm just going to do this myself. But what problems are inspectors and appraisers running into now with the do-it-yourself projects on decks? What's happening is they're seeing that the decks themselves are not properly attached to the home. The handrails are loose, right? They're insecure handrails, which are all violations, which will lead you to have to negotiate a little bit more if you're up for selling. Maybe pull the price down a little bit, right? So obviously you've already paid for materials, and now you've spent all this time and energy, especially looking at YouTube multiple times, trying to figure out how to do this thing, and then you still end up doing it wrong. And now you have a buyer who is like, well, this is unsafe. It needs to get redone by a licensed professional. Next thing is actually landscape grading. You definitely want to make sure that your outdoor elements are graded properly, and that means it moves water away from the foundation. Inspectors and appraisers have been seeing is that the landscape grading has been, DIY'd in a way where it actually will pull water in towards the foundation, right? Because a lot of people don't realize what they're supposed to be doing with the landscape grading. They didn't even think about the fact that, well, the water is supposed to be flowing away from the house, right? And once again, that can lead to water seeping into basements. It can once again be flooded, which would lead to mold again and all those serious issues. The whole market has changed. In that 2 to 3 year window where people were buying anything and everything, right? Nobody really cared what the DIY stuff looked like. Inspections were being missed, right? Or they were being skipped. And everybody thought it was just okay. Now that's catching up to us. Inspectors are starting to really notice these things because they haven't been waived now. Inspectors are starting to get back their business, and they're seeing that there are definite issues. And then the next step further is the appraisers are seeing that there are definite issues, which means that there will now be issues for the lender, right? So you definitely need to start paying more attention. If you're thinking about doing something DIY, then actually really, really do your research. If you've got friends that are contractors or something like that, ask them. Try to, if it's a financial burden, then make sure you're getting discounts or something, but still have the professional do it. That's probably the best way to go. They know what permitting is required. That's one thing that we're also seeing, is that the proper permits weren't actually pulled with the city, right? So you've got to have those things in order, especially if you're preparing your home to sell, and do it early. All right. So those were my tips for today. Do it yourself. Not as often as we have been. Calm down on that. Just slow to roll on that. Right. Definitely subscribe. Don't miss any of the videos. Every single week, I'm going to be putting out something that is hopefully valuable to you. So we'll see you next time.